Hello and welcome. If you're keen to understand, the real dynamics behind new political parties and how they actually work inside, you're in the right place.
Definitely. Today we're taking a deep dive into Nepal's Rastriya Swatantra
Yeah.
Party, the RSP.
Right, the RSP. And it's a fascinating story, isn't it? They shot up incredibly fast.
Yeah, really rapidly became the fourth largest party in the 2022 elections. Quite a bit of buzz around them as a potential alternative.
Exactly, an alternative. And this is where it gets interesting for anyone trying to grasp these movements while they promise something new.
Yeah.
Well, now there are some pretty serious questions about their internal democracy, their direction.
Mm-hmm. Seems that initial momentum might be hitting some internal roadblocks.
It does. So to really unpack this, we've looked at quite a few things. We've got public chatter from Reddit, which gives you that raw feel.
Right, the unfiltered take.
Yeah.
And then we've got reporting from major outlets, the Kathmandu Post, Nepal Kabar, Ratopati, My Republica. They're giving us insights into the conflicts, the leadership challenges, the organizational stuff.
So our mission here today is basically to pull back the curtain on the RSP's current state, explore those internal tensions, and, think about where they might be headed, especially looking at their structure and power dynamics.
Okay, so where should we start? Maybe with those internal rumblings. Sumana Shrestha's resignation as Joint General Secretary feels like a pretty big signal.
Yeah, definitely a key moment. Her reasons, they point straight at these core concerns, don't they?
They really do.
Mhm.
She talked about a lack of intra-party democracy, feeling like her voice wasn't actually being heard by the leadership.
And finding out about major decisions from outside the party, that's quite something.
It really is. It suggests a potential clash, right?
Yeah.
Between the promise of being different, more democratic, and maybe a reality that feels more top-down to some members.
And her push for that one person, one position policy, that's crucial too. It shows a desire for a different kind of political setup.
Exactly. She saw it as a way to stop power getting concentrated, like you see in the older parties. It's a principled stand, she argues.
The timing is also, well, it's interesting. Submitted resignation 2 weeks before it went public.
Right. Just after Rabi Lamichhane got out on bail, briefly. But it only came out after he was arrested again. Makes you wonder about the internal communication or lack thereof.
Definitely raises questions, but she was pretty firm, saying it was about the principle, that one person, one position thing, not some kind of, bargaining chip or PR move.
Yeah, she insisted on that.
Oh.
Suggests a real disagreement about the party's direction. And interestingly, she also said she's happy to focus on her MP work.
And maybe even run for a leadership role in the parliamentary party, if there's an open contest.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like she's not necessarily jumping ship entirely, but maybe wants to push for change from within, just in a different role.
And she shot down those rumors about teaming up with Balin Shah, the Kathmandu mayor.
Yeah, denied that flat out, which clarifies things a bit. And apparently her resignation did cause a stir internally. Some Central Committee folks reportedly asked her to stay.
So they recognized her value. But there's also that other perspective from inside the party suggesting maybe her lack of, long-term grassroots experience.
Right. And maybe expecting results too quickly. It's another angle to consider. New parties often have these tensions, different expectations clashing.
True. And it's not just her resignation, is it? There are these reports about friction between Rabi Lamichhane and Swarnam Weigel, too.
Yeah, a power tussle, apparently. And the concerning thing is that it seems to be spilling down to the local level.
Like that incident in Rupandeshi, in the Sinamena committee office.
Exactly. It suggests these top-level tensions are actually causing divisions among the members on the ground. That's a classic challenge for new parties managing leadership and ambition.
And then there are these allegations about breaking their own rules, like the coordinator Prakash Gawali issue.
Uh-huh. Holding a government teacher job, which apparently goes against their own statute, Clause 13E. Damodar Khatri brought it up.
And Khatri claimed he faced, physical harm for raising it. That paints a worrying picture about how dissent is handled.
It really does. It raises serious questions about the internal culture.
And it's not just critics. Lamichhane himself, in that political report from September 2024, admitted some major weaknesses. That self-critique is quite revealing.
Very much so. He talked about not handling his personal matters well and how that burdened the party. It shows an awareness, at least, of the impact.
And he admitted that some reckless statements and, grand promises they couldn't keep actually hurt them.
Yeah, even acknowledged the party's popularity was dipping because of all the accusations against him. the assaults on his character, as he put it.
That's quite an admission. And organizationally, he seemed pretty blunt there, too.
Extremely. Failure to build the structure, weak political training, slow expansion, unclear roles, lack of inclusive representation.
He described it as very top-down, centrally controlled, a real gap between leaders and members.
Which kind of explains the frustrations we heard from people like Sumana Shrestha, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And maybe the most fundamental point he raised, the lack of a clear ideology. No defined RSP DNA, he said.
Right. Because members come from such different backgrounds. He even seemed unsure if they should be mass-based or cadre-based. Maybe a mix.
That ideological fuzziness coming from the leader himself is a huge factor. Makes it tough to have a unified vision.
Definitely. And you see this reflected in those Reddit discussions, too. A lot of concern that Lamichhane's personal controversies are just overshadowing everything else.
Yeah, people seem frustrated. They want the cooperative fraud allegations investigated, sure, but they also want to talk about policy, about what the party's actually doing.
And there are differing views on his leadership, right? Some still see the charisma, the vote-pulling power. Others are wondering if someone like Sumana Shrestha, maybe less controversial, would be better now.
Which ties right back into those internal debates. And there's that worry online, too, that the RSP is starting to act like the old parties.
Prioritizing, getting ministries, getting into power, rather than being a voice for the public.
That fear that the alternative just becomes, well, more the same. It's a potent concern.
It really is. And this leads us neatly into another big challenge. Just organizing their general convention. That seems to have been a real struggle.
Oh, definitely. Postponed multiple times. It really highlights the organizational problems, maybe those internal disagreements again.
Yeah, the first date was May 2025 in Chitwan, right? But they had to push it back because they hadn't even formed the local committees properly.
And then Lamichhane's legal situation added another layer of uncertainty. He apparently told them to go ahead anyway at first.
He did, but then his rearrest just threw everything up in the air again. Shows how central he still is, even with the legal issues hanging over him.
So eventually, in April 2025, the Central Committee kicked the can way down the road convention postponed to February 2026.
A huge delay. Really underscores the scale of the organizational challenge. I mean, as of April, they'd only held conventions in, 6 municipalities out of over 750?
Just 6? Wow, that's a mountain to climb before a national convention.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole question of Lamichhane himself. Can he even run for leadership while he's in judicial custody or potentially facing trial?
But the acting president, Ariel, came out and said, yes, he's eligible, regardless of the situation.
Which again just reinforces how pivotal Lamichhane remains in their planning, despite everything.
And while he's absent, or his situation is unclear, the perception grows that the party is kind of drifting. Rudderless, some say.
Which feeds that one-man party narrative they say they want to shake off.
It's a tricky spot, trying to prove you're more than one person while that one person's situation dominates everything.
Yeah. And that brings us back to ideology, or the lack of it. Lamichhane's own report admitted they're still figuring that out.
But it did give some hints about what they might push for, constitutionally speaking. Some interesting ideas there.
Like an independent, nonpartisan president. And the VP coming from the National Assembly share.
And maybe a directly elected prime minister who could pick ministers based on qualification, not just party lines. That would be a big shift.
A very big shift. And turning the National Assembly into a council of experts, dissolving provincial assemblies. These are quite radical proposals.
They are. Plus, strong support for a fully proportional electoral system. That's another significant change they seem to favor.
And Lamichhane also acknowledged, didn't he, that early on they were seen more as a non-political trend.
Yeah, and that the Ilam by-election loss was a kind of wake-up call. Being new isn't enough on its own.
Suggests they know they need more substance, something beyond just being not the old parties. It's useful, too, to put the RSP in a wider context.
You mean looking at similar movements elsewhere?
Exactly. Think of AAP in India, Morena in Mexico, maybe Podemos in Spain, Renaissance in France. Their rapid rise isn't unique.
Good point. Studying those might give clues about the RSP's path.
But those examples also carry warnings, right?
Yeah.
As Republica pointed out, they need to actively avoid things like nepotism, corruption, infighting.
And really focus on, what do they call it, delivery-oriented, performance-oriented, development-oriented politics.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Focus on actually doing things, getting results. That seems key for any new party trying to build lasting trust.
Makes sense. So, wrapping this up, it feels like the RSP is at a really complex point. So many internal challenges swirling around.
Absolutely. We've talked about the internal conflicts, the questions about democracy inside the party, the huge problems getting their convention organized.
Plus, the ideological ambiguity, and of course, the shadow constantly cast by the chairman's controversies. It's a lot to juggle.
It is. And Sumana Shrestha's warning really hangs in the air, doesn't it? That risk of just becoming another traditional party if they lose sight of those founding principles.
Yeah, the transparency, the internal democracy. She put her finger on a critical point.
So it feels like a real make-or-break moment for them. Can they navigate these internal storms and actually build on that initial public excitement, solidify themselves as a genuine alternative?
Or will they, as Shrestha feared, kind of fall into the same old patterns we see in Nepali politics?
That's the big question, isn't it? Can they overcome these hurdles and fulfill that initial promise? Or will the internal pressures prove too much?
Leaves you wondering, really, what does the future actually hold for this alternative force in Nepal? Something definitely worth keeping a close eye on.